Hey there, Lupus warriors and the brave souls who love us. Join us as we venture out to tame the wolf within. I just want to let you know that I am not a medical professional. I am just a girl who has lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus in 2001 and I've had it for 22 years. I've dealt with debilitating lupus, I've dealt with mild lupus, remission, and flares, and I have been through many treatments. So I'm here to share my experience with you so that you know that you're not alone, or if you are someone who loves someone with lupus, so that you can understand what they're going through if maybe they're not comfortable talking about it. Welcome to episode 1 of my podcast. My vision for this podcast is to be informative, current, and open in order to be here for you as an advocate and moral support. I want this to be a judgment-free zone. I don't want you to ever feel bad for sharing your perspective. I'd like you to feel free to reach out on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. You can find me with Living with Lupus, Taming the Wolf Within. My name is Melanie, and we're going to get started. Currently, in lupus research, according to lupusresearch.org, the major focus of the Research Alliance has been lupus nephritis. They're testing the different types of antibodies that show up so that they can treat it at the source. There are different types of lupus. The type of lupus that I have is lupus SLE, known as systemic lupus erythematosus. Systemic lupus attacks your systems and your organs. Lupus nephritis attacks your kidneys. That is also the type of lupus that I have. Some celebrities that you may know that also have lupus nephritis would be Toni Braxton, Nick Cannon, and Selena Gomez. I'm sure we've all heard the story of Selena Gomez, how her kidney shut down and her friend was able to give her a kidney. That's so amazing, and it's so nice to have that representation from someone as wonderful as Selena Gomez, who really promotes positivity and being kind. And if you haven't heard of her brand Rare Beauty, you should definitely check that out as well. An estimated 16,000 new cases of lupus are discovered every year. That equates to 44 cases a day on average. 44 people a day are finding out that they have this disease. Now, I know the day that I found out that I had lupus was a traumatic day. It was devastating. And I'm actually going to read you a little excerpt from my journal talking about the day that I found out that I had lupus. Sitting in a dim, dirty, and crowded emergency room at a community hospital, it seemed everyone was there for the same symptoms: body aches, nausea, sore throat, chest congestion. The air felt riddled with germs. The chairs were hard and cold, which felt even worse on my already achy body. The floor, chairs, ceiling, and lights all had this olive green glow, and the staff was rude and unhelpful. Each patient in the waiting room was just a number with a face. Filling out my intake form, I wrote that my primary care physician was going to have me tested for rheumatoid diseases, which upon research I had noticed that I had symptoms to match arthritis and lupus. I didn't want lupus. I also wrote that I had been having pretty high blood pressure, averaging 170 over 120, though to be fair, I had no idea what that meant. The hospital was so overfilled that when they finished with my triage, they put me in one of the many beds that had been set up lining the hallway. Mine was near the nurse's station. I was so delirious that I barely remember them taking my blood for blood work and starting the IV. After being there for hours, waiting for someone to tell me what the results were so that I could go home, I called my mom to come and get my personal belongings so I didn't have to worry about them disappearing. She came up to the hospital for a brief moment because our entire household had the flu. After she left, I fell asleep, partly because of how exhausted I was, and partly because I didn't really want to be aware of my surroundings, which included a few homeless people who were drunk, and of course, patients with flu symptoms. When I woke up, there was a commotion at the nurse's station. A doctor they all seemed to like had come into the nurse's station, and they were cutting up and talking shop about a patient. So this girl comes in, the doctor said. She says she has the flu. She might have lupus, and when her blood work comes back, she is in complete renal failure. They all kind of chuckled in disbelief. They couldn't believe that someone wouldn't know that they were in renal failure. I remember thinking, wow, that is terrible. I have flu symptoms, right? There's no way they're talking about me, but that would have been awful. A little while later, the nurse came over with some good news. A room opened up, and I no longer needed to lay in the bed in the hallway. At this time, I didn't realize that I was being moved because she didn't want to deliver my test results in front of the other hallway patients. Kidney girl? Yep, that was me. At a very naive 21 years old, when they told me that my kidneys had completely failed, I literally asked, can't you just take them out like an appendix or a spleen? No. No, you can't. Turns out you need your kidneys. I was a mom, and I didn't know that I needed my kidneys. Thanks, high school health class, for teaching me all about sex education, but leaving out the part about how my vital organs worked. Well, I began to debate. I will have to come back later. I have a 2-year-old at home, and the laundry is piling up. I have dishes to do. I just can't. I can't stay here. At this point, I was up, collecting my clothes, ready to get dressed and get out of there, still not accepting the evidence right in front of me. I pled with the nurse to remove my IV, but she insisted that I needed to keep it for medication. At this point, she was putting something in my IV that limited my ability to continue arguing. A sedative. Interesting that she had it with her, as if she knew I would not take this news well. As I began to relax, I came to terms with the fact that I would be here for a while. So I called my mom to make sure she could take care of my son, and I tried to relax until the nurses could straighten out this mess with the test results and let me go home. By evening, I was in a room on a floor away from emergency. The good news is the olive green theme seemed to be left in the emergency room. This room was a little more comfortable, and being my first time in the hospital since my son's birth, I didn't realize what a blessing it was to have my own room. Finally, the doctor came into my room to talk to me. He sat down in the chair next to my bed, and with a concerned expression on his face, he explained that after running a panel of tests, they found that my kidneys were not functioning, and due to this, my brain, lungs, heart had all begun to fill with fluid. Turns out the information I had been given in the emergency room was not a mistake, but in fact, the news kept getting worse. I was in congestive heart failure. Diagnosis: systemic lupus erythematosus. Prognosis: 2 weeks to live at best. The doctor explained that lupus is an autoimmune disease and it is not curable. He offered little to no hope, which was very hard to swallow for a young, healthy 21-year-old brand new mother. The nurses continued to take blood every couple of hours to monitor how quickly my body was deteriorating. My arms were black and blue. I was anemic, sore, and exhausted. With continued fluids and damaged kidneys, my abdomen blew up like a water balloon. My skin on my stomach was so stretched thin that it was literally transparent. I would walk the hallways per the doctor's orders, and people would smile and congratulate me because they assumed that with the swollen belly and the walking, I was in labor. I didn't correct them. That was better than what I was actually going through. For the next 2 nights, the doctor would come into my room after his rounds, sit in the chair at the foot of my bed, and look over my chart while he thought I was sleeping. He would actually cry. On the 3rd night of this absurd pattern, I finally sat up. Look, doctor, I am 21 years old. I'm an adult. You can tell me. Am I going to die? He took his glasses off. He rubbed his eyes, almost as if he was rubbing away a migraine. Probably, he answered, as his eyes welled up with even more tears. I felt like my heart stopped. I wanted to scream and I wanted to throw up at the same time. I want my mom. So that is just, a little bit of what I went through just on day one of finding out that I had lupus. All of those emotions. And, when you're 21 years old, you think you're invincible. You think you have all this time. And within a matter of hours, that was ripped out from under me. So that's one of the extreme things that I had to go through as a young adult. To this day, I get nervous, if I start thinking too far in the future, because I'm like, am I going to be here? I don't know. And it's been 22 years. I wish that I knew 22 years ago that I would still be here now. I probably would have finished college. I probably would have done some other things differently. So that just goes to show you that you always want to make sure you're living your life to the fullest, because if you do have tomorrow, you want to make sure you're preparing for it. And if you don't, you want to make sure that you did everything that you wanted to. So with that said, I'm going to conclude today's podcast. And I do want to make sure that you know that you can reach out to me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And before we go, I do want to talk about today's sponsor, and that is going to be author Thad Diaz. And this book here is called Tampa Heat. It's part of the Cigar City Chronicles. It's a great book about a firefighter who in his off-duty days is a PI/bounty hunter. And it talks about some of the things that he deals with in a city like Tampa that has a lot of heritage and history in it. And it's very interesting. There are a lot of fact-based situations in here. The author, Thad Diaz, is actually a retired firefighter from Hillsborough County, which is where Tampa is in Florida. So he uses a lot of his knowledge to discuss the situations that a firefighter would face. And he uses his knowledge of Tampa and the location to make you feel like you're actually living in the book. It's an excellent series, and I definitely recommend it. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask me. But in the meantime, make sure you reach out on Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram at Living with Lupus, Taming the Wolf Within. My name is Melanie, and I really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you guys have a great week and that you stay symptom-free.